What do you come in search of? Validation? Opportunity? Maybe business unfinished?
I know how hard it is to get here. I'm well aware it's going to be twice as hard to get back to this point next year than it was this year.
Well, you're back. And in some cases, for the umpteenth time. KC looking for a 7th straight championship Sunday against a team that's never seen one.
Every single play!
Mahomes' legend, one win from level footing with football deity. Others may pray for favor on 4th. The Dans, always apt to push chips to the middle. The overwhelming favorite versus the long shot phenom. But what has this game taught us, if anything? Victory belongs to the willing.
God! We'll see you in Detroit!
LA and Philly have both felt it. But past result does not imply future outcome. Hope enough for LA that this time, records remain intact.
Touchdown! Saquon Barkley!
Yet hope is no strategy, and David ain't walking through that door. Sunday night on CBS, 2 Goliaths, both deserving of accolade and the opportunity to prove it again. But that's not how this thing works. And what lies within will determine if the dream lives on or 9 months of nightmare. You're one step closer. Don't stop now.
Welcome into the Early Edge NFL Divisional Round Pick Show presented by BetMGM, the sportsbook born in Vegas. Other people coming along shortly, but RJ, we first got to take a look at last weekend and give me your biggest takeaway from the wildcard games.
Well, after that great package, I want to make it Bills oriented. You know, you see the helmet over my shoulder here. It's going to be an awesome game between those two teams. And I think both of them did what they needed to do in those games to establish themselves as 2 of the top 5 teams. I was really interested in the Rams. That defense was incredible against the Vikings. 82 yards of sacks in that game, which helped hold Vikings to 3.8 yards per play on 71 plays run. It was just a dominant defensive effort from a team that lost Aaron Donald last offseason. So you think that they couldn't get to the playoffs just when you lose a player of that caliber, one of the best defensive players, maybe even in history. And they are doing it. They're doing it as well as they have on the defensive side. Just big kudos to Chris Shula, the job he has done growing that defense to be able to go into the playoffs and as an underdog completely decimate this Vikings offense that has looked so good for a big portion of the season. So very impressed by the Rams.
I'm very impressed by the defense they're going to face on Sunday, and that's the Philadelphia Eagles holding the Packers to 10 points, their lowest point total of the year. Jordan Love to his 2nd worst game in his entire career, and I know they lost a bunch of receivers in that game, but when you give up 76 yards on 31 plays in the first half to a Green Bay offense that was explosive coming in, to me, they are the number 1 defense in the NFL. That's the defense that's going to carry them to the Super Bowl, I believe, assuming the offense wakes up a little bit in this round. And RJ, let's get right into these divisional matchups. The Houston Texans, we saw this matchup just a few weeks ago. They were getting 3.5 in that game. Now they're going to Kansas City and they're getting 8.5. How do you want to play it?
So for me, this spread's a little bit too high. I don't feel comfortable playing the Texans, though, because I know the sleeping giant that the Chiefs are. We've seen it in the playoffs time and again. They can wake up. And there's really indications that maybe their offense is going to take that step. The offensive line has been less of an issue. We will see if they stick with Joe Thuney at left tackle or if they go to DJ Humphries. If it is the latter, I'm a little bit worried because I know it's worked with Thuney. I've seen it the last few weeks of the season. I don't know what has in store if DJ Humphries is taken over at left tackle. But they're also getting defensive players back too, especially in the backfield with Jalen Watson, Jamari Connor as full practice to start the week there. So I do want to play the Chiefs. I just think that overall number is too high. So what I'm going to do is play the Chiefs -2.5 in the first quarter at -120. Houston scored 32 against the Chargers. They were shut out until the last minute of the first half, shut down by Baltimore, as we know. We all saw on Christmas in between on the other side of the Beyonce concert that everybody showed up for. They saw that effort from Houston. I don't expect them to score early in this game against the Chiefs defense that I think is going to play well. now that they have a little bit more reinforcements back at cornerback. So I'm going to go with Chiefs -2.5 in the first quarter. I think the offense for Houston may also take some time adjusting to below freezing temperatures coming from an indoor environment that they are not used to. I think a rested Chiefs offense is going to have success early. I expect them to get points in the first quarter, probably even a touchdown. If they do get a touchdown, I think we cover this one pretty easily because I don't think Houston will be able to respond with a touchdown. So I'm not going to play the full game number. Would love to tease it at 8.5. Just don't have anything I want to tease it with. I'm just going to play Chiefs -2.5 in the first quarter.
I love it, RJ. Sorry for the delay. Technology, an incredible thing. Also, sometimes not great, but I think it's also cool, RJ, that you give a shout out to Mike McClure with the first quarter bet here. The king of the first quarter, Mike McClure. And I like that look. I also, frankly, don't like the Chiefs at the full number. Curious, Larry, do you like the Chiefs? Are you willing to take the Texans in any shape, form, or fashion here?
Yes, there is a shape, form, or fashion that I do like Houston. You go back to that game, Foley Fatukasi, Azeez Al-Shahir, Juice Scruggs. Those are three names you don't hear a lot about. They were all not there. And maybe Juice Scruggs on the offensive line was the biggest absence because that meant you had to play Kenyon Green, who recorded a 12 PFF grade in that game for pass blocking. I mean, the interior of the line was just a feast for Chris Jones in part because Juice Scruggs was not there. He will be there this week. I don't love the Texans for the whole game, but for the first half, they have been a great first half team. 14-4 against the number in the first half. They've been bad making adjustments in the locker room. I should point out one of the times they didn't cover the first half was in that first game. They were down 17-10 in the first at halftime. But you look at Kansas City, have not played a meaningful snap in 3 weeks, 4 weeks. I'm expecting a little bit of rust early. I'm expecting the Texans to come out throwing, which is what Bobby Slowick has done that over the second half of the season. And I think that's the way you have to come out, is try to get the passing game going because we know it's going to be tough sledding for Joe Mixon. But I'm taking 6 in the first half. There's some books now that are down to 5.5. I would still take the 5.5, even 4.5. I'm okay with as a first half play for the Houston Texans.
Yeah, I think a lot is really going to depend on this first drive for the Chiefs, right? 24 days off is an insane amount of time to miss. I mean, granted, rest is always good. This isn't the Chiefs team that was necessarily humming on offense, but do they come out of that break and just start cooking on that first drive? How is it scripted? Andy Reid clearly will have a good plan in place, but how do they execute that plan? And does the offense look sharp early? If it does, then I think you worry about these, whether this could turn into a blowout or not. I like the Chiefs in a teaser. Now, the smart thing to do, if I was smart, would have been to tease the Chiefs with the Ravens when the line opened on Sunday, Bills -1.5. You could then make the Ravens +7.5 and the Chiefs -2.5. You could have then come back this week and done another teaser, which is the one that I'm going to have, which is, you get the Ravens +7.5. I have the Bills +7.5 and Chiefs -2.5 because the line has shifted 3 points. I think it's too much on that Bills side. And if you could have that window with both teams for 7.5, it'd be great. And then we talked about the Chiefs. Even when their offense isn't clicking, this is a team that is possessed by warlocks or under the control of some sort of supernatural power where they should be -3 for every game, but also -5,000 on the money line. They should break the money line system. And I do think if you get them -2.5, I feel comfortable that the Chiefs, with all their talent, with their defense, with what we saw from them last year where they got to the playoffs and just flicked the switch and became good on offense, I think they do go out and win the game, win it by more than 3 points at home. Arrowhead's going to be rocking. They're kicking off the chase for a three-peat. I like the Chiefs to win, and I think and I have the Bills as part of the teaser, which we'll get to. Let's talk some player props for this game. Larry, you're going to dip down in the Texans a little thin at wide receiver, right? Maybe some opportunity there.
Yeah, another guy who wasn't there in the first meeting was John Mechie, the slot receiver. And with everybody out talking about Tank Dell, Robert Woods not practicing, Nico Collins going to be shadowed by Trent McDuffie, he was on him about 60% of the time in the first meeting, but that was with Tank Dell on the field until the third quarter. I think we might see 75% in terms of Trent McDuffie traveling with Nico Collins. They know he is the guy to stop. The Chiefs have given up the second most catches in the slot this year. So John Mechie over 3.5 catches. He had 8 targets last week against the Chargers. He did come down with 4 catches, only for 28 yards, but I think that is a great look in this game. And I want to just point out something. Our Crack Graphics team had those numbers: 16 TDs, no picks for Patrick Mahomes, 6-0 in the divisional round. He's actually only covered 3 of those 6, despite playing some amazing football. They're on a stretch of 7 straight games without committing a turnover. And, sometimes that luck regression has to come back. And you have a Texans secondary. They have 19 interceptions during the regular season, which was the second most. Then they get 4 more. Not all of them were their credit. A couple was, one was right off somebody's hands in the Chargers. But they do have an elite secondary. They do have an elite pass rush. So maybe they can get a turnover from Patrick Mahomes.
I'm going to go with Patrick Mahomes over 4.5 rush attempts. He's had time to rest his ankle, and he should be expected to get to 5 rushes, just like he did in that first Texans game, which came right after the injury, just a few days after the injury because of the short timeline on that game. Mahomes had 6+ carries in 4 of his last 5 playoff games. He typically is able to get to this number in the playoffs, and Larry's talking about Houston's solid cornerbacks. He may need to run to get first down rather than trust testing those cornerbacks at times. So I think I like the over on the attempts rather than going for his yardage, just in case that he's a few yards over and then some kneel downs take it off the board like we saw in a Super Bowl before. So I like playing over 4.5 rush attempts. I think I was able to get it at plus money earlier in the week, and I think that was just silly considering his playoff history in running the ball. My other prop is Nico Collins going under 82.5 receiving yards. With Watson and Connor practicing in full, it's going to make life tougher on Collins as the Houston receiver that you obviously want to take away in this game. Let anybody else beat you in this game but Nico Collins if you were the Chiefs. So even with the injury issues in the secondary and playing from ahead, the Chiefs have allowed 83 yards to only 4 receivers all year when you exclude Week 18, where they allowed it to Cortland Sutton in a game where they weren't giving their all in that game. So that's not very frequent that guys are able to get up above this number. So even at Collins' talent level, I think he's going to have trouble getting there against a healthy defense in the Chiefs that should be playing on all cylinders because they're rested.
Yeah, and worth noting, too, in that Mahomes rushing attempt prop, which I like, RJ, you talked about the kneel downs hurting the yardage. Well, the kneel downs count as rushing attempts. So, if you can get like 3 and then he has to take 2 knees to close out, you can hit that there without losing on the yardage. So I like that as well. I want to look at, and it's hard to find him right now, but Xavier Worthy, I think, is a really interesting player for this. He seemed to come on strong during the second half for the Chiefs, but I don't want to just do receiving yards. You mentioned the cornerbacks. They're obviously very difficult to deal with. I'd rather look at rushing and receiving yards, and I didn't see a number out there just yet for Xavier Worthy. I think we'll get one by the weekend, but they love to use him on end arounds, jet sweeps, quick hitters. He's a straight line burner, so he can get you there to that number if he gets open deep on a design play call down the field where they try to isolate him maybe against a better matchup and whatever they're doing with Kelsey and moving him outside. Hopkins, of course, Hollywood Brown. But I think Worthy is going to get some gadget plays in or around the line of scrimmage, maybe some runs. And I'm just a little worried his yardage ends up being more of the rushing variety than the receiving variety. He gets it in around, and the dude could take it to the house. I also think plus 210 for him anytime touchdown is a pretty good look as well. So I will be targeting Xavier Worthy as we get closer to the game. We have a big time superstar matchup. You're like, Jared Goff's a superstar. I don't care what people say. The Lions fans chant his name. You know who's definitely a superstar? Jaden freaking Daniels. Commanders at the Lions. Jameer Gibbs, superstar as well. Coming up after the break, we'll tell you our best bets on the early edge. Welcome back to the Early Edge NFL Pick Show Divisional Round Edition. Will Brinson, Larry Hartstein, and R.J. White here to give you our best bets for every single game, picks against the spread or the total, plus some player props for each of these games. Commanders at Lions. I mean, look, it's a huge spread. It's hard to know what kind of expectations to put on this game because Jaden Daniels, rookie quarterback starting his first game, he don't care. This guy is unbelievable when it comes to being clutch and to playing at a high level. He looks like a superstar quarterback, but but he is laying a lot of points in a potential, or he's getting a lot of points, excuse me. The Lions are laying 9.5 here with a total of 55.5. Potential shootout in Detroit on Saturday night, Larry.
I think we get the shootout. I have no doubt about the Lions' ability to put up points on this Washington defense, which has shown some improvement down the stretch. Getting Jonathan Allen back was good. Marshawn Lattimore, hopefully he worked off the rust. He didn't look great last week trying to stop Mike Evans, but I have no doubt the Lions are getting to the 30s, and I have a lot of confidence that Jaden Daniels can get this team to the mid-20s at least. This is a guy. When he played the Eagles, the number one defense in the league, they put up 36 points and nearly 6 yards per play. So they've done it against the best defense in the NFL. And the Lions, I think we're looking back at that Vikings game a little differently after watching Sam Darnold, crater for a second straight week under pressure, seeing ghosts. It kind of made the Lions' performance a little less impressive. It's all going to come down to fourth downs, to red zone plays, because we know how good the Commanders have been at converting those. And we've seen the Lions give up a ton of yards, but then they make the big play, they make the big stop in the red zone. So it's going to come down to a couple of those plays. I'm going to bank on Jaden Daniels and his rushing ability, because Aaron Glenn, we know how running quarterbacks do against Aaron Glenn. So I'm going to bank on Jaden Daniels converting those, extending the drives, and getting enough points for Washington to get us over the total.
So the spread in this game, I think, is wrong, and I don't know which way it's wrong. So it's going to be wrong one of these directions. The game's going to go one of two ways. Detroit's defense is an issue, and Washington has a chance not just at covering, but pulling off the upset because they're scoring a ton of points. Or Detroit's defense that we saw against Minnesota with Alex Anzalone back, maybe getting a little bit healthier in the secondary, has success against Jaden Daniels, who's been very good, but is still a rookie quarterback, and it's a blowout. Because I do agree with you that the Lions are going to score a ton of points here. Either way means value isn't playing the main spread, but it's playing alternates. And so that's what I'm going to do with my picks. I'm going to ladder Detroit up to a 20-plus point win. And what that means is I'm going to take Detroit at minus 12.5 at plus 125 or so, minus 16.5 at plus 200, and minus 19.5 at around plus 300, because I think there is the potential for them to win this game with a 41-17 type of final in this game. I think they could score 50 if they really wanted to. Washington is the one team left. I wouldn't be surprised if their true level is below average. They have been catching a lot of breaks on fourth down, catching a ton of breaks. They had five turnovers in that Eagles game and still won it. That's not something that typically happens. So I don't know. It's Bobby Wagner's also been hurt, missed the first two practices. If he's not able to go, that is a major loss in the middle of the defense, particularly defending the run, which is what you need to do against this Lions offense, especially with David Montgomery expected to return in this game, give them their 1-2 punch back. So I think this game has a blowout potential more than any of the other ones, especially if that Detroit defense is playing at least somewhat the level that we saw against Minnesota. They can make it a boat race pretty quickly.
Yeah, and I think too here, RJ, not like Aaron Glenn needs motivation to try and have a great defensive setup against the Commanders, but like if you shut down Jaden Daniels and your team dominates, like you're really going to lock in the chance that Glenn ends up getting a head coaching position just because he's done such a good job calling this defense, orchestrating good defensive plans, even when they've lost all these guys to injury. And then on the flip side, we heard Dan Quinn after they lost to the Bills go on that like F-bomb laden rant where he talked about eating moldy bread. And what he was really trying to say was, all right, we need to take a step back, realize what it means to lose, realize how it feels to lose, and also lean into what our strengths are as a team. And they have done that over the last month or so. They have decided, bleep it, we are going to put like all gas, no brakes with this offense. And I really don't think that you're going to see them take their foot off the gas. Now they have David Montgomery back, right? Who's going to be able to like ice the game out some. I don't think they'll want to use him as much as possible, which means Jahmyr Gibbs may be there running some carries late. They could run away, like have some big breakaways. So I like the Lions here at minus 9.5. I just think they are the best team in football with an offense that, the defense has dealt with injuries. This offense is healthy and loaded, and they are going to keep their foot on the gas against this Washington team, especially knowing Jaden Daniels' prowess in the second half of games, his ability to come back and keep games close. And I just don't think you're going to see Detroit ever really ease up. They are going to try to score as many points as they can. So I like those alt looks, and I frankly like the over as well. Let's get to some player props. I mentioned David Montgomery, Larry. So take it away.
Well, to your point, Jahmyr Gibbs has a dream matchup here. I mean, he's erupted the last 3 games without Montgomery, but Washington gives up the most yards on outside runs in the NFL, almost 6 yards a carry. So the Lions would be wise to continue using Jahmyr Gibbs as the primary back. And David Montgomery basically said the same thing. It's his backfield. It's a great story that Montgomery is back. I know he's going to have a role. I know he's probably going to be in high leverage and short yardage situations. I just don't think he's going to get the full amount of carries that everyone is projecting. And I went under 65.5 rushing and receiving yards combined for David Montgomery, thinking, yes, they're going to use him, but maybe 10 carries, maybe not 13 or 14 carries. But to RJ's point, if it turns into an RJ game where it's 41-17, this prop is lost. My bet is based on the fact of the Commanders keeping it competitive, where they're not icing the game with David Montgomery the entire fourth quarter.
So Larry made a key point for me for my Jahmyr Gibbs prop, and that's longest rush over 18.5 yards at -130. He has 13 runs of 20 plus yards this season and 3 more right on 18. Well, Washington's defense ranks 28th in yards per rusher allowed. Then you look at those outside runs like Larry's talking about where Gibbs is really going to cook. I think he has a great shot at hitting a 20-yard run in this game. 8 different running backs have had runs of 20 plus yards against Washington this year. Gibbs is going to be at the top of that tier with like Saquon Barkley. Like you don't get many better than Gibbs at this point. And then that Bobby Wagner loss, you remove an elite run defender from this defense, and that even gives him a higher chance of hitting this number. So love him to break off a long run in this game, potentially for a touchdown, like we've seen guys like Saquon Barkley do to this defense. So over 18.5 yards on Jahmyr Gibbs' longest rush is my top prop for this game.
I like it. I actually think, Larry, that the David Montgomery thing isn't dead, even if it's a Lions blowout, because if they're up big enough where they feel like they can run the clock out, they may take Montgomery out and put in like Craig Reynolds, knowing that they want Montgomery to be fresh and healthy for the championship weekend. So I think like both of those are very live. I like Sam Laporta over receptions in this game. It's 4.5 with a little bit of juice, maybe like -120. Laporta's, didn't have the season everybody expected. Certainly started slow, but over his last 5 games, I mean, this guy has been critical to this offense. 7, 10, 7, 8, and 7 targets in those games. He's cleared 4.5 receptions in 4 of those 5 games. Only failed to do it once in a blowout of Chicago. And I think, when you take those numbers across a 17-game season, he's on pace for like 100 yards and 100 receptions and 1,200 receiving yards. Like, they've really gotten him back involved and sort of balanced out the offense with the usage of Laporta, the usage of Jameson Williams, how they get Jahmyr Gibbs going. And I think it will be a Gibbs game, and like a little less Montgomery means a little more Laporta. So I like Laporta to catch 5 passes in this game. Also think he's probably live for a touchdown, has 2 touchdowns in that stretch as well. And it's just been it's Laporta potty season, man. What do you want from me? I think Laporta's a good look. All right. Another NFC game we've got to get to. My Rams headed to Philadelphia. Matthew Stafford, extremely sharp early in the game in that blowout game against the Vikings, and the Eagles just looking dominant as usual. Can the Rams defense keep it up? We will tell you best bets for this game coming up next on The Early Edge. Welcome back to the Early Edge NFL Pick Show Divisional Round Edition. Will Brinson, Larry Hartstein, and R.J. White giving you picks, best bets, and player props for every single game on the slate. Awesome weekend of football. Maybe the best football weekend of the year, depending on how you feel about wild card blowouts and whether your team won or lost. My team won. That's right. The Rams looked dominant on Monday night. The defense came alive, and they are now the reward. You win the division, you beat a 14-win Vikings team. Guess what? You get to go to Philly, and you're a pretty big dog in Philadelphia against the Eagles, who are a 6-point favorite in this spot with a total, Larry, of 44.5.
I think it's a spot for the Eagles and not for your Rams. When you have Matthew Stafford going outside, to inclement weather. This matchup was 37-20 in LA with Saquon running for 255. Let's not forget. And the Vikings were not able to get the running game going. Aaron Jones was held under 4 yards a carry, but the Rams are going to have to commit so much attention to stopping Saquon Barkley that I think the Eagles offense, the passing game is going to wake up. Jalen Hurts was a little bit rusty. First game back from a concussion, hadn't played in a while. This time he's going to have guys, he's going to have man-to-man. He's going to have opportunities. A.J. Brown is definitely going to have a much better game. And I just think, it's a bad spot when you have a short week and you're going on the road, 30-degree weather, rain and snow. It's not a good place for Matthew Stafford. The Cleve TA, the analytics guru, points out when you have a dome team going outdoors and it's under 40 degrees in the playoffs, they are failing to cover by an average of a touchdown in those 24 games, 7-17 against the number. I think that continues here, and your magical run ends on Sunday.
That could certainly happen. Jalen Hurts is going to have to play a lot better. It wasn't just rust for me. It was bad. He was bad for a big stretch of that game. And I say that as a guy that bet Jalen Hurts to win MVP before the season. I think he's a very good quarterback generally. He needs to play better in this game now that we're in the divisional round of the playoffs, because they are going to load up to stop the run. They know what the issue was in that first game, and they need to take Saquon Barkley away better for being able to have success in this game. And I think Chris Shula can do it. Very smart defensive coordinator. We've seen that his plan grow with the talent on that team, the young talent on that team as it's grown. I think they can come out and be competitive. I'm not too worried about the situation of going outdoors for Matthew Stafford. This is a guy that's seen it all. He's won a Super Bowl with the Rams. He's played outdoors in the playoffs before. I think he's going to handle everything that's thrown at him. Whereas Jordan Love, still inexperienced, second year as a starter, he's had stretches of elite play, not proven in the playoffs. I think Matthew Stafford just is in a different class based on what he's proven himself in his career. I don't think the Rams defensive line is going to have the same success this week as they did last week against an elite Philly offensive line. It still is on Jalen Hurts to make the throws as that defense loads up versus Saquon. And the Rams have won every meaningful game since that Philly loss in week 12. And the defense has stepped up, aside from that Buffalo game where it just became a shootout once Josh Allen got into his bag and just was scoring touchdowns left and right. I think we have a better coaching staff and a better quarterback, Brinson, on our side of this game because I believe in Stafford more than I believe in Hurts at this point. So I'm going to take the 6 even with the Rams outdoors and make +6 my play here with the Rams.
I mean, it's not. I was going to say it's presumptuous of you to assume I'm taking the Rams. Of course, I'm taking the Rams. Are you kidding me? You give me 6 points with the Rams and Matthew Stafford. Look, I think a little concerned with how the Vikings adjusted to the Rams after that initial sort of surge of LA's offense. But what I really liked was that Sean McVay dialed up a game plan against a Minnesota defense that is very good against the run that featured Stafford getting the ball out quickly, getting it to his playmakers, and moving the ball with the pass instead of trying to be stubborn and run the football against a difficult front. Well, Eagles are a really difficult front. And if you come in and just try to run Kyron Williams up the middle or like off tackle, you're going to get stonewalled because they can stop you there. So I think we see the same sort of thing early where the Rams come out, and if the Rams can start hot and get a lead, score early, and then maybe make the Eagles sort of the team that has to try to throw and has to sort of get away from the run a little bit. And they are going to load up to stop the box. And I agree, it's on Hurts. Maybe he looks better this week. I feel very confident in how Matthew Stafford will look. The path is, I realize at Philly is a whole different ball of wax than at Tampa Bay, but when they went and won the Super Bowl, they had to travel on the road in that second week of the playoffs. Same sort of setup here. Win at home ironically, against the Cardinals 2021. I think we see I just have a feeling Stafford's going to come out and look great. I think the Rams are going to win the game personally, so I'm absolutely going to take the 6 points. Let's get to player props. I'll just go ahead and throw this out there, RJ, but actually I'll let you go ahead. Who do you have in the player props for Rams and Eagles?
Yeah, I'm looking at Saquon Barkley, and I'm doing the one thing nobody wants to do and go on under for him on his performance. So we know what he's capable of. He's had 300 yards in that first game, combined rushing and receiving. He could do that in this game. I think that he has to be the focal point of what you take away defensively. So I'm going to go under 126.5 rush plus receiving yards. Feels hard to do it. I'll trust Chris Shula to have a better game plan to slow him down with his improving defense and make Jalen Hurts beat you with his arm. And I think that that's the path to an upset for the Rams, and they know it is. So as as good as Saquon is too, I mean, everybody knows you have to take away Saquon in this offense. He's been held under this number in about half of his games, maybe a little bit over half of his games, including the receiving yards here could be the key. He's been barely used as a receiver since the start of December. You go down his box score, you see a lot of like 1 target for 4 yards, 1 target for 5 yard type of games. And that could be what keeps him under. His rushing number, I think, is 116.5. It's also very, very high. So a number that you just typically don't see in the playoffs. I think it's fine to fade that too. I like throwing the receiving yards in there as well, just to give us a little bit more of a path to get there, because if he's going to go over receiving yards, have 20, 30 receiving yards, he's probably going to have an amazing rushing game too. Not going to really matter.
Yeah, I like that look. And look, I mean, getting in front of the Saquon train is a tough spot because he's an incredible player. He could run for 200 yards. Nobody would flinch. But remember, Mike McClure pointed out before in that first game before the playoffs started, we were talking about betting advice for the postseason. These numbers are inflated. And no, there's nobody out there wants to take Saquon Barkley's under with the Eagles a home 6-point favorite. That's terrifying. You're going to see a bunch of like alt Saquon overs. And I do think if the Rams are going to be live to win, and RJ believes that they are and thinks they'll cover, then they are going to have to nullify Saquon and force Jalen Hurts to throw the ball down the field. So I like that look. I'm going to lean into my projection as well here, which is that the Rams come out throwing early, and I'm going to take Kyren Williams over 12.5 receiving yards. He ended up with 3 catches for 16 yards against the Vikings. I think if Minnesota was competitive in that game, and they weren't, then this number is a lot higher because they wanted to have some design passes to Kyren Williams early and often. He's going to be a nice little outlet there if the Eagles pass rush is getting home for Matthew Stafford to dump off. We could get there on 1 catch, quite honestly. And I think he ends up with more than 16 last game, 3 catches in 2 straight games, no Blake Corum. We saw 87% of the offensive snaps in that game in a blowout. Where the defense scored a touchdown as well to take away a possession. I think he gets close to 100% of the offensive snaps for the Rams here. And just because of the way that pass rush is going to work and maybe get home a little bit, you're going to see some quick hitters thrown to Kyren Williams. I like his over 12.5 receiving yards. All right, Sunday games as well. I don't know if you guys have heard. There's a little bit of a quarterback matchup on CBS. Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen, maybe the greatest quarterback matchup in divisional round history. And oh, by the way, Derrick Henry's here too. We'll tell you our best bets for that game coming up next on The Early Edge.
This is going to be one of the best games we've ever seen. 2 of the best quarterbacks that just gave us 2 of the best seasons.
Inject this game right smack dab in the mind. I want every bit of it.
One guy had 0 offers out of high school. The other was told to play receiver. How did we get here?
There's been a lot of doubt going on. Me being a running back, receiver. I feel I should have a chance at quarterback.
I was begging teams to, give me a scholarship. If you knew who I was 3 years ago, I don't think you would say this is possible.
The Buffalo Bills select Josh Allen. Baltimore Ravens select Lamar Jackson.
They gonna get a Super Bowl out of me. Need that.
Thank you to the Bills organization. I'm gonna make them look like they're the smartest people out there.
This is just unfathomable.
This is a loss that sticks with a franchise forever.
Tremendous disappointment in the postseason. And for Lamar Jackson, not an MVP evening.
I need the naysayers to keep going, keep adding fuel to that fire for me to keep being Lamar Jackson.
It's a funny thing how things work out. Not getting offered motivates you to play a little better, play a little harder.
Oh my goodness! A Josh Allen explosion!
Lamar Jackson does it again!
We are witnessing something special
We
here.
judge MVP based on our eyes and how we feel.
I hate how this conversation has just turned ugly. Both have had elite seasons.
Enough talk about who's the best. Everyone has been looking forward to this one.
Couldn't ask for anything more. This is going to be played at the highest possible level.
2 of the best quarterbacks to ever play the game.
One of those rare moments when 2 living legends collide.
All right, welcome back to the NFL picture here on the Early Edge for the divisional round. Will Brinson, Larry Hartstein, and R.J. White. I mean, look, I don't have to sell this game to you. It's on CBS, so you should watch it. And you will be watching it because it's one of the best games of the year. Bills versus Ravens in the divisional round with both Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen knowing there's some MVP. Like the stakes aren't there because it's already been decided, but like there's going to be plenty of motivation to go around. RJ, how you feeling about your Bills?
Well, after seeing that clips package, I want to jump through a table. I'm ready for Sunday. Like, I wish we could just fast forward and get to this game right now. It's going to be an amazing game. Some people are going to call it the Super Bowl. I'm not going to go that far, but it might be the semifinals, and whoever plays the Chiefs might be the Super Bowl next week. Because I think all three of these teams can beat the NFC teams. When you look at this matchup, we know what the Ravens did the first time around. The Bills were missing a few defensive players in that game, but just the level of domination from the Ravens side, I can understand why the market wants to bet the Ravens up to being favorites. I think it's a lot of disrespect for a team in the divisional round to be home underdogs. 8 teams have been home underdogs in the divisional round since 1977. Only one lost in regulation. This is a situation where Buffalo, I think, is going to step up with Josh Allen. While the Baltimore defense has taken a big step forward since the bye, they played a lot of questionable offenses. I think Buffalo can get to 30 points here. Baltimore could still win a shootout with Lamar and Henry. I think the original line making Buffalo short favorites was the right one. I have Buffalo +1. I think Zay Flowers could be the key, even in freezing conditions where we don't think there's going to be as much passing. Without him, I think the Baltimore receivers struggle versus these Buffalo cornerbacks, and the Buffalo defense can load up to stop the run as much as possible and win a 31-27 type of game. So I'm going to go with the Bills +1 and just hope that we can get it done this time in the playoffs.
Well, I jumped on the Ravens when they were small dogs, but I would still lean their way right now where the line currently is. And yeah, the teams are much different since that beatdown way back when the Ravens came out and scored 3 touchdowns, going through them like butter, running for 271 yards. And yes, the Bills defense has improved and guys are back, but that is still the weak point of this defense. I mean, even Denver rushed for 4.6, 4.7 yards a carry. They couldn't sustain it because they were falling way behind and they had to throw, but you can still run on this Buffalo defense. And I'm not so sure that you can run on Baltimore. They give up the fewest rushing yards per game, and we saw that's how Buffalo wants to attack. So yeah, it's going to be a classic. It's going to be high scoring. I'm going to take it just the other way, RJ, and call it 31-27 Baltimore with Lamar finally getting that monkey off his back.
Yeah, I mean, look, this is the type of game where if you're going to hear hot takes. You've heard hot takes all week. You're going to hear them all throughout the weekend leading up to it. People saying this is going to happen. This is going to happen. Like, I mean, if the Bills roll or the Ravens roll, then you can, pound your chest and say that you got it right. But otherwise, it's probably going to be a pretty close game, just in terms of like these two and like it coming down to some funky stuff happening. I've got the Bills in the teasers. I mentioned. I think whoever's the dog here. Now, the important thing is get your teasers in early in case this closes as a pick'em because you want that 7 points. I just think whoever's a dog, you're getting 7 points with one of the 2 best teams in football. Now, is there an argument you could make that the Ravens could get a lead and just feed Derrick Henry and blow out the Bills? Yeah, probably. I think there's also an argument to be made that the Bills could come out hot, get a lead, and we saw what happened to the Ravens when they are one-dimensional. Lamar Jackson's an incredible passer. I don't think he can't come back, but he doesn't have as many weapons. We mentioned Zay Flowers. Like, I think I would rather have I think there's just more outs to the Bills covering and coming back if they need to in this spot. I like the Bills at +1. I like the Bills to win the game, but I'm going to have the Bills in a teaser with the Chiefs. Bills just need to lose by less than 7, and the Chiefs have to win by 2.5. As far as props go, RJ, remember last week this time I said I was going to round robin all the quarterback rushing yards, and then I forgot to, and then all the quarterback rushing yards hit, and I yelled at myself all weekend. Any quarterback rushing props you like in this spot?
Well, 3 of the 4 hit. We didn't get there with Daniel. So it's still a successful strategy to round robin them. I'm going to go back to the well with Lamar Jackson over 52.5 rushing yards. I think the Bills are going to win the game. I said they have to load up to stop the run. I think that's really going to come down to slowing down Derrick Henry, who is the key to that rushing offense. And they're going to be okay with letting Jackson do whatever he needs to do on the rush game. He came through with 81 rush yards against Pittsburgh while the line was around the same number. He's hit 54 yards in 6 of his 7 playoff games and 63 plus in 4 of his last 5 this year. So he is already in that mode of running. The temperature is going to be cold. We know he's probably going to take off a little bit more in the cold. Buffalo's defense gave up 43 yards on just 4 rushes to Knicks last round. His number was around 20. I've covered that easily. I expect their focus to be slowing down Henry. They believe their cornerbacks can match up with these receivers, and then Lamar is going to get whatever yards he can on his 10, 12, maybe even 15 carries to get over this number. So I like Lamar Jackson over rushing, even though I do like the Bills to win the game.
Yeah, and I'm on a quarterback rushing situation as well, essentially, unless he does it again and catches a touchdown pass from himself like he did earlier this year. Josh Allen, that is. We saw against the Broncos, Allen was not active with his legs in the red zone and down by the goal line. I think that was by design. They don't want him to take as many hits in those big piles if they can help it. Although they did, sneak him a lot in short situations, particularly on fourth down. And I think they're going to go back to Allen in the red zone, down near the goal line, letting him use his legs in this matchup, because this is, it's the playoffs. It's win or go home every week, but it's a big difference between being a 1-point dog at home to a really good Ravens team and being a 9-point favorite against the Broncos. You felt when the Bills took that game over last week. This week, I think they will use every trick in the book to try and advance, and that includes letting Josh Allen run down by the goal line, where he is pretty unstoppable when he gets ahead of steam, and you can push him in there. You get PI. I think they feed him on the one. His touchdown number is plus 105, which is reflective of the usage last week. I think this is a great spot to jump back on Josh Allen anytime touchdown. All right. It wouldn't be a playoff show if we didn't give out some futures as well. There's tons of fantastic markets. Chiefs to lead the playoffs in yardage. Saquon Barkley, maybe a guy. If you think the Eagles can keep it going, we'll give you our best future picks for the rest of the playoffs coming up next on The Early Edge. Welcome back to the Early Edge NFL Pick Show, Divisional Round Edition. Will Brinson, Larry Hartstein and R.J. White. We gave you our best bets for every game, along with some player props, but we got to do some futures as well, boys. And there's a lot of great markets out there that you can jump in on, not just the exactas that we mentioned, like Bills, Rams, Super Bowl. Bills to beat the Rams, still 37-1, still great value if you believe in me, I guess. Larry, who do you believe in when it comes to the futures market out there?
Lamar Jackson to lead all quarterbacks in passing touchdowns in the postseason. He got 2 last week, so he's got a head start. And I just think they're the best team overall. This is a good matchup against the Bills because the Bills are weak at defending the run. And this is a historically great Baltimore offense and a defense that over the last 6-7 weeks has been top 3 in the NFL when they made those moves with Kyle Hamilton and Marlon Humphrey now in the slot. So I like the Ravens to win it all. And because of that, Lamar to lead in passing TDs.
I'm going with Amon-Ra St. Brown to have the most receiving yards in the playoffs at plus 450. There was no big games of note from the 3 true Super Bowl contenders in the wild card round: Buffalo, Baltimore, Philly, receiving wise. And that leaves Nico Collins at plus 360 favorite. Nico Collins isn't going to win this award. He's going to play 2 games, and I don't think he's going to have a great receiving game in this one and not get to 200. If Detroit plus 110 to win the NFC is anywhere near correct value, I love getting their WR1, who is by far the leading receiver left in the playoffs, to have maybe 3 games or runway to win this prop. Detroit also gets to play every game indoors and avoid the elements, which is not the case for these AFC teams that are beating each other up outdoors. So love getting Amon-Ra St. Brown. I think plus 450 is a great value.
Yeah, and that's the thing with St. Brown, too. And Lamar, when you project these futures, you don't need to look at what the current number is. You need to think about how long can these teams play. And the thing about the Lions stuff too is, if the defense isn't as good as it was, maybe you have a chance for some real shootouts and some real potential there for Amon-Ra St. Brown to rack up yardage. I like James Cook to lead the playoffs in rushing yards at 10-1. Now, obviously, the Bills have to win this game. But if the Bills can win this game and Cook can be involved, he's at 120. He's trailing, Derrick Henry. He's like 60 yards behind Derrick Henry. So that's a problem. But if you knock out Derrick Henry and you stay reasonably close to him in this game, then you're going to have 2 more games that Derrick Henry won't have to rush for yardage that Derrick Henry can't get. So I think the 10-1 number is what I like there. And Cook has been fantastic for the Bills, especially in these big leverage spots where they've used him. Bills offensive line doing great work. Cook running with tremendous explosion. And I think he could rip off a couple big runs and get us there. All right. That'll do it for us on the divisional round picks. Great games coming up. Make sure to tune in to Bills and Ravens on CBS on Sunday. And head to sportsline.com/join and use promo code WINNERS to get 60% off your annual plan. And while you're there, subscribe to the Early Edge Betting Podcast, wherever you get your podcast. For RJ, for Larry, I'm Will. See you guys later.